Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm very pleased to offer this talk on consciousness and Ruh. When I postulated and identified Ruh as consciousness, some Muslim brothers, scholars, they alerted me, have you read the book of Imam Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, his Kitab al-Ruh? Naturally, I read that book, and I was very happy that his postulate in his book, إِنَّ الْأَرْبَاحَ هِيَ الَّتِي تَعْقِلُ تَفْهَمُ. That is, Ruh has the faculties of cognition and reason. And these two faculties are grounded in consciousness. Let me go to the heart of the consciousness instead of giving general definitions. Dr. Faisal Khadi has simplified my job. He has echoed the universal agreement that conscious experience that is generated in our brain, I don't know, is it brain or mind? I will clarify. From sense experiences, I am looking at the blue sky, how the blueness of the sky is formed in a physical brain. And this challenge, all neuroscientists around the world have been working on consciously for the last 50 years. And now there's a universal agreement. There is no neural correlate of consciousness. And my task was then how the conscious experience is arising in a physical brain. I gave the hypothesis that brain is working. I gave the hypothesis that brain is working as a neurocatalyst. It's just processing. It is not generating meaning in the conscious experience. How is it happening? There was the earlier reductionist approach was to explain conscious experience in terms of coding genes or brain physiology. And there was limitation. If I show it to a patient or a person under my examination, apple, there is some movement of the neurons and some pattern there. If I scan that, does it correlate the actual color and the taste or whatever of the apple? No, no such correlation was observed. Cannot be observed. Obviously, epistemologically is out of question. At that moment, my approach was to make a wild hypothesis that there should be a novel society of non-coding genes responsible for consciousness. Within 2 years, alhamdulillah, that kind of a gene, non-coding gene, has been discovered in the University of California, Santa Cruz. That gene had the capacity to form the 6 layers of cerebral cortex, and that is the seat of cognition. Still, my next task was, how is it happening? So I postulated again a field, potential field of consciousness over the physical cerebral cortex, not in a physical way, but above it. Just like the whole universe was defined in terms of space-time continuum, and another field over it, covariant with the space-time continuum, a field of gravitation. And Einstein successfully described the physical universe in this term as to wherever some matter exists on space-time continuum, that dips, and that dips is the measure of gravitation. On the same analogy, I propounded a sense-sound continuum, just like a space-time continuum, and over it a covariant field of universal field of quantum consciousness. And this has been published because in quantum mechanics, the challenge was, and Einstein discovered it and refuted it all his life, the next 30 years that he lived. He said, I don't believe this theory. I discovered it. And the theory is simply this. If you produce 2 photons from a single source, they come out entangled. And if you separate them, they disappear. And they go in terms of waves all over the universe. And the funny thing is, if you stop this photon, consciously the other photon stops instantaneously. That is the key word. Einstein didn't believe it because in the physical universe, the fastest speed is the speed of light, 300,000 kilometers per second. And he said, nothing can travel faster than light. So I don't believe in this theory. He rejected it. He called it incomplete. And the action of these photons he called spooky action over long distance. Instantaneously, nothing can correlate without signals. The ball was in my court again. I described that universal field of quantum consciousness and postulated new signals called quantum conscious signals, call them neurons. This has been very well accepted, published again. And this theory of consciousness addresses how a physical brain, when it encounters physical sense experiences, forms a concept. So the drawback that the physical brain cannot form conscious experience has been now bridged. I call this theory unified field of quantum consciousness. How am I relating it to Ruh? Ibn Qayyim Jawziyah's hypothesis that Ruh has the faculties of both cognition and reason. When I described this mathematically, it turned out to be 100% identical with the physical unified field theory of Einstein. And that was a marvelous correlation. My equations explain the mental phenomena of cognition, how concepts arise, how they interact, and we explain the phenomena like spiritual healing. There, the keyword is the spirit. What has to do with the spirit there in healing? How the healing is taking place through spirit. Spirit is coming from a Latin word spirare, to breathe. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the first man, Adam, he breathed into him ruh. And ruh, according to Ibn Qayyim Jawziyah's hypothesis, is nothing but consciousness. So the possibility of cognition to bring about healing, this I presented in an exercise to show how healing takes place, and I was awarded John Templeton Foundation Award on this integration of spirituality in medicine. The word spirit has remained a metaphysical entity because a formal science of brain anatomy and physiology was not available until 1990s, when it was declared the decade of the brain. And by 2003, human genome was completed. When Imam Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah postulated his theory of cognition and reason as the faculties of the ruh, for 700 years that hypothesis remained unsubstantiated because brain physiology was unknown until 1990s. Now the surprise comes when this brain physiology was completed and was available. I proved that it is not the brain which is producing conscious experiences. Brain is acting only as a neurocatalyst. This hypothesis is also accepted now in another paper published in the Journal of Neuroquantology in 2013 and now 2015, last year. So in short, the brain is working like an oven. It's processing, the brain processes multisensory information reaching the brain. It integrates into a point syntax, and the linear syntax that we use in our language expression is secondary from there. At the secondary level, the point syntax becomes linear syntax. I forgot to mention before that how a concept which is formed as a conscious experience in the brain is represented, that it becomes an invariant concept for us to transact and to understand each other. Is I had to describe a novel, another representational field, neuroscientific field, and that represents the thoughts in that manner that it is semantically coextensive with the conscious experience. And according to Immanuel Kant, he called it noumenal concept, and said we cannot access it because we don't know how to represent it. My field of neuroscientific field, describing, representing the conscious experience in a semantically coextensive way, solve the problem. Before we use, express it, those concepts, linguistically. So this research becomes part and parcel of seeking help from higher being. And you'll be surprised, pleasantly surprised, the modern medicine gladly has accepted the concept of higher power in medicine. For 40 years, last 40 years, they tried to substantiate it, and they could not, because consciousness theory was not available the way I have explained. And now I'm in contact with the NIH and NIMH that the possibility has come to describe the existence of uncaused creator, the Tawheed. Alhamdulillah, that opening has come, and I'm transacting with them.